I think it's helpful to just jump to what they're looking for because there's so much information that's given. Just what do we need to solve for? So for the requirement A, calculate the overhead rate for each cost driver. Okay. And then B, an order of 50 ceramic dishes had the following, how much overhead should be assigned? So where do we start? Now we're just coming up with the overhead for each cost driver. So for A, just how much overhead, so this is like that predetermined overhead rate for each one. So they give us the activity, right? Purchase order, setup, testing cost, machine maintenance. And then they give us the driver activity.
Divide those.
All you have to do is divide to come up with what that rate is. Okay? So for the first one, I'm just going to abbreviate and say purchase order, setup cost, testing cost, machine maintenance. If we just do it out, the 20,000 or 200,000 divided by 25,000, what do we get for that?
8.
8, and this is per order. And then setup costs, 300,000 divided by 15,000, 20. And what is that? Per what? Yep. And then for testing costs, for 20 divided by 16,000 equals what?
$26.25
Good. And what is that?
per test.
Per test. Good. And then the machine maintenance, 800,000 divided by 50,000 equals what?
16.
Very good. $16 per machine hour. And if you're ever wondering what it's by the cost driver. So the cost drivers are going to be given to you. So you've already done A. Calculate the overhead rate for each cost driver. Then we jump to B. And it's saying an order of 50 ceramic dish sets had the following requirements. How much overhead should be assigned to this order? So now you've got this one order of 50. How are we going to assign this? This is just overhead. Notice this problem is not talking about direct labor or direct materials. We're just looking at overhead. How are we going to assign the overhead to this 50 ceramic dishes? Yeah. So now we've got number of purchase orders. So we multiply it by activity. So number of purchase orders. And how many was that? 3 is the number that actually happened in this order. And then we're going to multiply it by the overhead rate of 8. How much is that? 24. Then we go to the next activity, setup. We had 20. By what rate? 20. We come up with how much? Okay, and then we move on to the next activity, product test. We had 7. That's what the actual order was. And then what was the rate for this one?
26.25.
Yep. What does that come out to?
183.75.
Good. And then the next one we had machine maintenance. So this one's by machine hours. This is a big one. So 150 hours by $16 per machine hour. What does that come out to?
2,400.
Good. And then you add them all together, and what do you get? 3,007.75. And what does that number represent? Jen, what do you think?
The total overhead costs.
Yeah. Total overhead for this 50 ceramic dishes. So if they had given you the direct materials, direct labor, you could come up with that total cost. This is just asking you for overhead. Just be careful of what they're actually asking you. Okay? And then it's asking in C, so these are, not calculations, but Would you expect the new activity-based system to allocate a different amount of overhead? What do you think? So, this is, we should probably read from the beginning. David Mayers manufactures plastic and ceramic outdoor dinnerware. The company's Western plant has changed from a manual labor operations to a robotic intensive environment. As a result, management is considering moving from direct labor based overhead rate to an activities based overhead rate system. The controller has chosen the following activity pools and cost drivers for factory overhead. So here's the question to you now. You've done this ABC costing, and it's asking you, would you expect the new activity-based system to allocate a different amount of overhead? What do you think?
Yeah,
Why?
because our machines are in overhead.
The machines are using overhead. The machines would use overhead in the old system too.
Like we said, it's more efficient.
So we're doing a different allocation base. So of course it's going to be a different allocation of overhead because under the direct labor-based overhead, remember from chapter 3 when we were doing the predetermined overhead rate, they would have allocated all of overhead based on direct labor. Under ABC costing, what are we allocating it over?
Our activity.
All of these different activities. So it says, one would expect the new ABC system to allocate overhead differently than the old system, although direct labor may have been an appropriate cost driver in the past. The more automated process used this year are likely to result in more batch product and facility level costs and fewer unit level costs than the old system. So it makes sense for them to be doing this breakout. Okay? And then the next one is just asking, discuss why using an activities-based system could provide better information to decision makers regarding the setting of sales prices. What other advantage might David Myers realize from the new costing system? So I think somebody had already said it. Just why is it better? Discuss why using the activities-based system could provide better information to decision makers. Somebody said it. We're breaking out more detail. We're allocating the overhead in much more detail than under an old system. Okay?